For the brain starter, you're asked to look from angle C and label the sides of the triangle as hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. I'm going to give you time to do that now, so you should pause your video. And now I'll give the answers in 3, 2, 1. The hypotenuse is always across from the right angle, so AC is your hypotenuse. Since we're looking from angle C, the side that's opposite that is AB. And the side that's adjacent, which just means next to, is BC. In this lesson, you're being reintroduced to the 6 trigonometric functions. All of the trigonometric functions are based on an angle theta. So sine of angle theta is the side that's opposite theta and over the hypotenuse. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. On the right side, we have the reciprocal trig functions, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. See how that was opposite over hypotenuse? Cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Instead of adjacent over hypotenuse, it's hypotenuse over adjacent. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, being adjacent over opposite. I know it would be really nice if the two ones with co matched up and the two without co matched up, but unfortunately they don't. Sine goes with cosecant. You will be receiving notes in class with this exact thing on it. However, one way that if you ever forget is you can remember the easy acronym SOHCAHTOA. And that just stands for sine is the opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is the adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. In this problem, we're going to find the actual ratios using exact numbers. So the first step we need is we need to look from angle theta and label our 3 sides. The hypotenuse is 17, the opposite is 8, and the adjacent is 15. Now, it's going to be your job to fill in the ratios for sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So pause your video now so you have a chance to do these problems. I'm going to give the answers in 3, 2. Since sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, that's just 8 over 17. Cosine is the adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's 15 over 17. And tangent is the opposite over the adjacent, so that is 8 over 15. Cosecant is 17 over 8. Secant is 17 over 15. And cotangent is 15 over 8. In this problem, you're given that cosine of theta is 2 over 5, and you're asked to find the 5 remaining trigonometric functions for the angle theta. So I've drawn a triangle down below, and since cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, the adjacent would be right next to it, and that value would be 2, and the hypotenuse would be. Now pause your video and think, how could you solve for the remaining side, the opposite? How could you get that side length? I'll give you the answer in 3, 2. The way you solve for this is the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And one important thing to note is that 5 is your c. 2 can be either a or b. So you have 2 squared plus b squared equals 5 squared. Simplifying this, we end up with b squared equals 21 after you subtract the 2 squared on both sides. And then you take the square root. So b equals square root of 21, which is approximately 4.58, but it's totally fine if you just leave it as the square root of 21. Now take some time to solve for the 6 trig ratios above, and remember that you should never leave a square root in the denominator of a fraction. I'll give you the answers in 3, 2. Sine is square root of 21 over the hypotenuse 5. Cosine, which was given to us already, is 2 over 5. And tangent is square root of 21 over 2. Cosecant is 5 over the square root of 21. But remember, we can't leave a square root in the denominator. So one thing you can do is multiply by 1. Now, the best way to write 1 here would be square root of 21 over square root of 21. What happens in the numerator is you're left with 5 radical 21. And then in the denominator, since the square root of 21 times the square root of 21, you're just left with 21. And that's your answer. Secant is 5 over 2. And cotangent is 2 over square root of 21. Again, we have the square root of 21 in the denominator, so we have to cancel it out using the same method. And you're left with 2 radical 21 over 21.